Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today where we'll be talking all about apprenticeships and lots of different aspects of apprenticeships and helping you get up to speed with what's happening in apprenticeships at the moment and what to think about in terms of workforce planning, the new funding, and also an additional area around apprenticeship training agencies and how they could maybe help your business. The webinar today comes from myself and Claire Vertigan. Claire, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I'm here. I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Excellent, excellent. So just to kind of get people familiar with how the webinar software works and things they can do to contribute to today's session, there's a question box in your webinar toolbox, and so please feel free to ask questions throughout the session. If there's an obvious point at which we can integrate them into the discussion, we will. If not, we'll try and answer them at the end. And if we can't do that, we're happy to answer them via email if it's something desperate that needs to be covered. Also, our contact details will be at the end of the webinar so that you can contact myself and or Claire and ask us questions direct. So we're very happy to help. Okay, just to give you a background about why this webinar is taking place and who's running it. So today's webinar is being run by Apprentice Makers, and I run Apprentice Makers. Apprentice Makers is a not-for-profit activity that was originally started in collaboration with the National Apprenticeship Service, and it's all about upskilling SMEs around the knowledge around apprenticeships and giving them access to apprenticeships and the information they need. There are tons of resources on Apprentice Makers which can help you navigate the apprenticeship process. And I'm just going to show you a brand new resource that we have developed, which I'll be sending a link to afterwards. There's this whole journey through the apprenticeship process available now on Apprentice Makers. And so after this session, go on, have a look around, give us feedback, let us know how it works for you. But it takes you all around the funding, what an apprenticeship's for, how to recruit an apprentice, the whole kind of kit and caboodle around apprenticeship. So please have a look at that and see what you think and give us feedback. Okay, and of course, as I said, Claire is joining me today. Hi Claire, can you give me a brief overview of your business and what it does to support businesses around apprenticeships?
Okay, so yes, I'm Claire Vertigan. I'm a director of the South West Apprenticeship Company. We are what the government calls an ATA, Apprenticeship Training Agency. So we were set up with government funding quite some time ago now, but we now are independent of government funding. Working with SMEs initially, though we do work with some larger employers. So we work from the very, very small, the one-man band who has no infrastructure, no HR, doesn't know where to start, would like to have some extra help within the business, is thinking about apprenticeships, all the way up to the multinationals who have HR departments who also want a specialised HR recruitment and employment service. So we work across the whole of the Southwest, so Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, west of England, down into North Devon. We don't really touch on the Cornwall area, but there are ATAs down in Cornwall. The sectors that we cover are anything. A business can come to us in any sector, and what we'll do is we'll sit down and discuss what their skills gaps are, what their needs are, and how apprenticeships can fit within that, giving them an impartial advice and guidance and matching to a training provider.
Great.
So, yeah,
okay,
and this is the area that we cover there.
Yeah, there's the area you cover. And so, as I'm aware, there's ATAs across the whole country. And so businesses can find ATAs by going onto gov.uk, and there's a list of approved ATAs on there. Is that right?
That's right, yes. So there is, in the Southwest, there's not as many as in other areas, but there are some ATAs. There's Western College, we've got an ATA, Cornwall College, we've got an ATA, and then there's some private ATAs that are run by private training providers as well.
Great, okay. And if you're wondering what an ATA is at this point, don't worry, because we're going to go into this in more detail later. But it's just letting you know that, yes, Claire covers the Southwest region, but this is a model that's available throughout England, and so you should also be able to find support in your region. Okay, so before we talk about apprenticeships at all, we're going to talk about workforce planning and what your business should be thinking about before it even starts to consider apprenticeships. Because when we talk to businesses, sometimes we meet businesses that say that what they want is an apprentice, and they haven't quite worked out what they want that apprentice to do, or what kind of role they see that apprentice fulfilling in the workplace. So before considering apprenticeships, it's about thinking about the business plan, the company's vision, and how that feeds into the business plan, and what skills and knowledge are needed at all levels of the business to support it. Because one of the key factors of the upcoming funding changes are that apprenticeships are going to be funded for people of all ages and at all different levels. And therefore, something to think about when you think about apprenticeships is not necessarily what entry-level positions do I need to fill, or what kind of support do I need in that area. It's about what does my business need as a whole, and how might apprenticeships be able to support that. So just to kind of provide some thoughts around identifying the gaps. This is kind of quite a basic model, really, but it's around thinking around the SWOT analysis, the kind of strengths and weaknesses in the business. What are your good practices? What expertise and resources already exist in your organisation? And what are your weaknesses in that area? What skills and resource could you actually be using apprenticeships to support with? And then externally, what opportunities exist that you can maximise on? Is there an opportunity that could be supported with sales or marketing, for instance? And again, how could youth skills support this? And then it's also thinking around the threat to your organisation. How do you need to safeguard your organisation's market share, and how can you actually use skills to support that as well? So thinking about that on a business level, and again, it's pretty basic, pretty much an overview, but it's looking at not just your core business. So if you are a business that's making bottled drinks, for instance, it's not just about thinking about all the skills that would need to actually get that through the production line and to market. It's thinking about all the support areas as well. So the HR, marketing, finance, admin, and a few more that I'm sure people can think of, and how you can support your existing team and potentially grow a new team to help with those support areas. And it's sometimes an area that businesses don't always think of. But for instance, if you're a new business and you've got a fantastic office manager, could that office manager be developed to eventually be the head of marketing or the company accountant? And how can the skills of individuals grow as the business grows? Claire, when you meet businesses, whereabouts are they when they first talk to you about apprenticeships? Do they do this process? Do they think about their business holistically like this, or do they come to you saying, I need an apprentice and I don't really mind, they're going to be doing a bit of everything? What sort of process whereabouts are they thinking when they contact you?
Every business is different, so that's why we sit down with them individually. So we do get your larger employer or your medium-sized employer that are very clear. They've had apprentices in the past, they've done their business planning, they know where the skills gaps are, they've done progression planning and looked at succession of where there are people coming up for retirement and where they need to replace those skills that person has with perhaps an apprentice. We have other organisations that are saying we're growing rapidly and we need support and we'd like to invest in apprentices and we don't know where. So that case is very much sitting down with them and looking to see where the skills gaps are, where they want to move their business to, and how apprenticeships can help them. It's not always is apprenticeship the right way, so we're quite impartial and we'll let them know that if we don't think it fits or there isn't a framework. But sometimes it's about sitting down with an organisation and with a flip chart with some of the smaller organisations and getting them to think about how an apprentice can support the people within the business. What can be delegated off? Is there new products coming in, new equipment, how the apprentice can be used to support that? So yeah, everybody's different, to be honest. But so we approach every new company fresh.
Yeah,
it's definitely not off the shelf.
Yeah, I think people are surprised by the breadth of apprenticeships available and by the fact that they can support an existing employee on an apprenticeship, and they can support, they can support people of all different ages now. And so, I think for lots of businesses it's an eye-opener that when thinking about it's thinking about skills development more widely, isn't it?
No, definitely. Like a lot of people would, like, say, would take, for example, business admin. People just think of it just being, it's everybody business admin apprentice is doing the same units, the same role, but they're not. Every business admin apprenticeship is different. You can pick up on HR units, administering finance units, so running payroll, raising invoices, which isn't a full-blown accountancy apprenticeship. It's just, the support role. It picks up on social media. It picks up, marketing units. It also picks up on things like HR. So we have some apprentices doing business admin that are also doing their CIPD in the evening, but they've picked up on the HR units around recruitment and things like that. So, yeah.
Great. Okay. And so let's just think about so a business has thought about its skills needs, and then it kind of, I suppose, needs to start thinking about whether an apprenticeship is a good fit for those needs. Claire, is it all right if you just talk us through what an apprenticeship is and how that works?
This particular side, it's the way that we present it is different. That when they sit down and they think about whether they want to take on an apprentice, they need to think, first of all, is this a genuine job? Is it something that they're going to be able to give them work tasks? And then if they've decided it is a genuine job, will it fit against a apprenticeship framework or standard? Again, it needs to be a minimum of 30 hours. If they are 16 to 18, a maximum of 40. But so some people don't realise that apprenticeship has to be a minimum of 30, not 20, not 25, it's 30. The apprentice needs to be paid by their employer for the whole 30 hours, or 35 hours, or 40 hours. So if they have to go for 1 day a week to college because they're doing engineering or they're doing accountancy, you have to pay them for that time when they're off the job. 20% of the time is off the job. So if they're in the workplace, then it could be that they're doing webinars or they're coming in and being taught within the workplace. The training is funded, I think you'll go through the funded later. There are grants and incentives that are available. It's all changing from the 1st of May, so it's all changed for us at the moment. The apprenticeship can last from 1 to 5 years. So we've got apprentices with us that are doing a level 2 business admin, level 3 business admin that are only for 1 year. But we've also got apprentices that we've been employing for the last 4 years who are now coming to the end of their engineering apprenticeship. And so, there's obviously a lot more that goes into an engineering apprenticeship, so it is a lot longer. To actually complete the apprenticeship, the apprentice needs to be able to demonstrate that they're competent in their knowledge, skills and behaviours required for that apprenticeship or standard. So that's the bit about the assessment. And so they have to show that they can do the role and that they're doing it competently as the job role as well as the taught element of it. So yeah, that's what an apprenticeship is.
Great. Well done, because I know that's the slide we normally use, and you've had to talk around your usual overview around that, so thank you. Right. The last kind of bullet point is significant in that it mentions transferable skills. So if a business is doing an apprenticeship, it's the apprenticeship they run can't be one that's just only specific to their business. The framework or the standard that it's based on has to have skills that could be transferable for that apprentice.
So that if at the end they can take them with them and be used with other, within the industry. Yes.
And on that, some businesses get really worried that it means they're going to train someone up and then that individual is going to go off at the end of the apprenticeship and they'll have put the hard work in and another employer will benefit. But the reality is that there was some research that came out a couple of years ago that apprenticeships are actually more likely to increase loyalty in an individual, and that they're more likely to stay with that employer if that employer is invested in them by offering them an apprenticeship. So although it does happen occasionally, it happens with staff of all different all different levels, at all different backgrounds, and there are ways that businesses can kind of protect themselves in some ways by continuing to make it an attractive offer to their employees. But
it's
actually,
loyalty-wise,
they're pretty loyal, aren't they, apprentices?
Yeah. We find that on completion, 98% of our apprentices either progress onto a higher apprenticeship, so level 2 onto a level 3, or level 3, 4, or onto a 5, or they're actually employed direct by the employer, the host employer that we've placed them with. So, that kind of says it all.
Yeah, and of course, if the sector is really active in apprenticeships, it means that it's not only your business that's training apprentices, it's other businesses as well. So yes, you might lose one, but you might also gain one that has the transferable skills to work for your business. So, it's courses, I guess. Okay, this is just a very short overview of what apprenticeships, the kind of apprenticeships covered. Are these the ones, this is your list, Claire. Is this because these are the ones that you encounter most often?
It is. These are the ones we encounter most often. Like it says there's over 1,500 occupations across 170 industries. We have had apprentices from business admin to engineering to laboratory technicians to fire and rescue apprentices to hospitality to chefs to care. It's to design technology to print. It's across the whole range. And even now, like I think I said to you when we were talking earlier that we've had people come to us and said, we are craft bakers making cakes. Can we take an apprentice on? Is that possible? And yes, there is. So it's definitely worth looking into. If you've got a skills gap and you need to look at training, then there could be an apprenticeship that covers it.
Yeah. And what I would urge businesses to do is it might not always be obvious who the training provider is that offers that apprenticeship, and that there are lots of different sources of support to help you find someone that can help you with the apprenticeship you're interested in. So there's all the training providers that you can contact, and you need to contact a few really to get an idea of how different training providers might offer something differently, offer that apprenticeship differently. Obviously there's ATAs like yourself, Claire, that can offer that breadth of experience of the different training providers and what they've got on offer. You could obviously contact the National Apprenticeship Service. They have a helpline, and I give the number at the end. And you can get involved in Apprentice Makers, see if you can contact any other employers or put a call out via ourselves to say, I'm looking for an apprenticeship in X. Has any other business got an experience of doing this, to see whether or not there's something that's another way to unearth the right provider for your business. There's lots of support out there, so I wouldn't, if you're looking for an apprenticeship and the first provider you find can't offer it, I would keep looking and asking as many different sources as possible. So just to kind of give people an overview of how apprenticeships work in terms of levels, and this applies to both frameworks and standards. The entry-level apprenticeship is a level 2. It's called an intermediate apprenticeship. And most apprenticeships kind of operate on a career progression route. So you would start on a level 2 business admin, for instance, and then once you completed that apprenticeship, there's an opportunity potentially to move up to an advanced level, and then high level, and then possibly higher still. Maybe you could do a degree apprenticeship, or you can come in at any of these points. So it might be that as a business you're interested in taking people on and starting straight at degree apprenticeship level. So businesses can start at any point which is appropriate for the job role that they're looking to fill. But obviously if they start at, if they offer something at entry level, they can potentially progress that individual over a number of years to degree level or higher apprenticeship level. When you look at apprenticeships on gov.uk, and again I'll be sending links to this afterwards, you can see how some of these progression routes work for different job roles. Just to touch on standards and what that actually means when we're talking about standards and frameworks. So to date, apprenticeships have been based primarily on frameworks. And frameworks were developed mostly with sector skills councils and they were developed around the 1,500 job roles that we talked about before. And the majority of these are still in place, and lots of businesses are using them all the time, and they've been really successful for a number of years. However, over the last couple of years, the government's been supporting groups of employers to get together to form what's called trailblazer groups and develop new apprenticeships that fit to the job roles in their industries. So that might be replacing an existing framework, or it might be inventing something brand new that didn't have an apprenticeship before. So a good example of that is I've worked with the event management trailblazer group, and they have set up a brand new entry-level apprenticeship, a level 2 apprenticeship in event management, and they're going to be now developing the level 3 and the level 4, and these are brand new standards that have been developed by a group of employers that run event management businesses, and those standards have gone through a approval process with government. The government said, brilliant, they're spot on, it's got the knowledge, skills and behaviours that will achieve that role. You've got an assessment plan which will show how that standard will can be assessed, how we can say that person can do that job, and we will now fund that apprenticeship. So the standards are happening all the time and coming online all the time for businesses to get involved in. It's worth bearing in mind that currently about half of the standards are in higher and degree apprenticeships. And I think that's just because there was a lack of those before. And so when employers have got together, they've been really keen to develop those in their industries. But over the next couple of years, standards will gradually replace frameworks altogether. So frameworks will be phased out as the new standards come in place. So just to reiterate, frameworks have been developed by sector skills councils. They're still in place and still working quite well in many areas. Standards are developed by groups of employers, trailblazer groups, with some support from government who are approving and advising throughout the process. Frameworks tend to be structured around MVQs and BTECs. Standards are structured around the knowledge, skills and behaviours, which Claire was talking about before, the KSBs required for that job role. And as Claire also mentioned, with the new standards, 20% of the time must be spent off the job. Frameworks are currently more plentiful and have been around longer. Standards are assessed at the end of the apprenticeship and are graded, whereas frameworks are assessed throughout. And as I mentioned before, frameworks are gradually being phased out and will disappear completely by 2020. And the standards will come in place. Currently, there's only 152. There might be a couple more, actually, since the last webinar. I haven't updated this figure for a couple of weeks. But standards are still in the minority, but they're being approved all the time and being made available all the time. Does that summarise frameworks and standards, do you think, Claire?
yeah, no, definitely. At the moment, there's some of the frameworks and standards are running alongside each other. So we've got some organisations, like say with IT, that some are on the standard, some apprentices on the standard, and some are on the old framework. And with laboratory technician, I think we've got that with the laboratory technician apprenticeship framework is going to be switched off in October, I think, and it'll move over onto the standard. So any starts now probably be on the old framework, and then they'll move over. But yes, it's
employers worried
some of them
about
there isn't
using
much different.
What do employers want at the moment?
Some of them are really looking to the new standards. It's much, when you send over a standard overview to an employer to see, it's very user friendly. It's like it explains to you the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are required by the apprentice within that actual qualification, whereas before with the frameworks, when you've got like a 76-page document, it was a bit more difficult to explain to them what was key within it. So it's mostly they're embracing it, and they're seeing it as being something that's been developed by the industry for the industry. So.
But employers shouldn't be worried about using a framework.
No, definitely.
It doesn't mean that it's going to be any less valid.
No, it won't be less valid, and the apprentice won't come out with anything less. It'll still be seen as being the same. like when you talk to engineering training providers, they will tell you they're probably in some of the pathways there won't be much difference because it was fit for purpose. So
yeah, yeah. And if you're an employer that's not involved in standards currently, you can go on to the standards part of gov.uk. You can see what's happening in the apprenticeships you're interested, and potentially get involved at least in the consultation stage. Most apprenticeships are kind of in development or ready for approval, aren't they? But they can still get involved and show interest and be around for when that apprenticeship goes live and be one of the first businesses to use it, essentially.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we're still getting companies like, who are looking at new standards and thinking about what they might want in the future. Because at the moment, the apprenticeship the apprentice is doing is perhaps being put together because that was what was available, and then we've had to bolt on different courses, etc., to make it so the apprentice has a fuller experience. So, they're looking for something for the future. So there's still things being developed.
Great, okay. And as I said at the end, I'll send links to the frameworks page on gov.uk and the standards page. You can see the different ones available there, and it gives you an idea of which ones are live. So we're going to talk about funding now and how funding is changing from May the 6th. So we're going to talk about the new funding, not the kind of existing funding, because there's only a few more days where that's actually going to be in place. But if you do take on an apprentice tomorrow, the existing funding rules will apply. But we're going to talk mainly about the new funding. But one of the first things to think about when we think about funding is not the funding from government, but the fact that the apprentice, when they're actually in your business, will be primarily funded by your business, because you will be required to pay them as you would any other employee. So these are the minimum wages for apprentices. So it gives you an idea of how, for SMEs, if they're taking on a particular junior member of staff, it can be a really affordable way to support an apprenticeship and bring someone into your business. So from April, the national minimum wage for apprentices went up to £3.50 an hour, £3.50 an hour for a 16 to 18-year-old, or for someone that's 19 plus in their first year of their apprenticeship. And then when they are in the second year of apprenticeship or 24 plus, it's the minimum wage for their age. And the other thing that makes it attractive in terms of salary and additional support from the employer is that national insurance contributions were abolished for the under 25s as of April last year. But something to kind of bear in mind here is that although those are the minimum wages for apprentices, lots and lots of businesses pay more than this, don't they, Claire? Because it's actually quite difficult, particularly for more mature apprentices, to even consider an apprenticeship unless it's a salary that's livable on.
Yeah, no, definitely. Our average wage for an apprentice, should I say average starting wage, is around about £5.40. It's for engineering, average start is about £5 in Bristol and Gloucestershire, and maybe a bit more down in North Devon. Business admin's around about £4.50 in Gloucestershire. Bristol's more like £5. But it depends. It's like I always like to say, £3.50 is very attractive to a 16 to 18-year-old when their options are going to do A-levels or going to college. But if you are looking for somebody who perhaps has had a bit of work experience, who has had weekend jobs, holiday jobs, then they're probably going to look at £3.50 and say, I can't live off that. So it's about, what I always say to a company is to consider what they can afford within their budget, and to look to see what they think the job role is worth, and then if they do bring somebody on, to always look at rewarding that individual against performance. Yeah.
And of course, the apprenticeships that are coming online, particularly, are going to be such a high quality that for some individuals they might be willing to take a lower salary, knowing that they're going to be getting a really good quality qualification. But at the end of that, they will expect the remuneration for that role, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. Engineering, very much, they start off a lot lower than what you're paying your fully qualified engineers, but they're expecting by the time they get to their fourth year and they're making an impact on the business and, making bringing in new skills and knowledge and making you savings with what they're bringing to the business, they would expect to be rewarded.
Yeah.
As I would.
Yes, we all would. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's look at what's happening in terms of the funding and how it will work. So from May the 6th, the funding for apprenticeships will change. It used to be based on the age of the apprentice, the kind of funding that was available from governments. But now it's simpler in many ways because the funding that's available is the same across the board, whether your apprentice is 16 or whether your apprentice is 18 or 60. So throughout all ages, the government support will be 90% of the training and assessment cost for that apprenticeship. And that's for the lifetime of the apprenticeship, any age, any level of apprenticeship. Okay, there are a few caveats to that, so I'll go into those now and just sort of explain how that works. So if you think just across the board, 90% comes from government, that means that you as a business will need to contribute 10%. The phrase that's used, that's really a key phrase in the whole new funding regime, is co-investment. So the government pays 90%, you co-invest 10%. So what you're paying for then is a 10% towards the training and assessment costs, so the cost of that apprenticeship. How can you find out how much an apprenticeship costs? Well, if you go onto on gov.uk and look at the standards and frameworks that are available, each one will have a funding cap. And that gives you an idea roughly how much that apprenticeship will cost, because most training providers, correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, are likely to be keeping the cost of that apprenticeship to the funding cap for that apprenticeship, or thereabouts.
That's the conversations we've had. Yeah, no, definitely. The conversation we've had with the training providers is that they're going to keep it to that funding cap.
Yeah. So funding caps change depending on the apprenticeship. So if you are taking someone on an entry level, for instance, business admin, the funding cap is likely to be one of the very lower funding caps. It could be that that's a 1-year apprenticeship, and that the funding cap for that is, say, for instance, 2,000. I think that is what it is for business admin.
It is. It's 2,000, yeah, for the 12 months, yeah.
Yeah. So if that goes on for a year, then the government will contribute 90% of the training assessment, and your business will contribute 10%. So, £200. Took me a while, didn't it? So £200. So over a year, you'll be paying £200 towards the training and assessment for that apprenticeship.
Can I just say one thing in that? Sorry. No, I was just going to say with that as well, is that that is to realise as well, the £200 is not expected to be paid up front. You can pay in instalments, which is really good.
Yeah. So although businesses can sometimes be worried about this phrase of co-investment and how that works, if looked at it in the kind of cold light of day, actually in terms of training, it's a really affordable option considering the extent of the training available. So it's not something to necessarily be worried about. Obviously, as the apprenticeship gets to higher levels and as it gets to more complex areas, the training caps are higher. So for some degree apprenticeships, for instance, I think the highest training cap, is it 18,000, the highest training cap? I think it is. I'm not sure.
I would have to...
Sorry, I put you on the spot there, but it's or thereabouts.
That means the business one of the higher ones.
Yeah, so that means the business will be contributing 10% of that higher training cap. But of course, the degree apprenticeship is one that's going to be lasting a lot longer. And they will, again, that payment will be spaced out over that period of time. So there's still considerable amount of funding available for the apprenticeship training and assessment. If the business, any business, I put SME here because this was an infographic designed for SMEs, but if any business takes on a 16 to 18-year-old, they will also get an additional grant of £1,000. It's not a huge amount, but it does help towards that co-investment, and it also helps bed the apprentice in as well and get them, through the induction process until the point at which they might be offering some return on investment. So it's something. And then if you are a smaller business, you run a smaller business with less than 50 employees, and the apprentice is aged 16 to 18, the government will contribute 100% of the training and assessment costs. Over that age, the business will have to co-invest the 10%. But if they're 16 to 18, the business contributes. The government will contribute 100%. It's not just 16 to 18-year-olds, it's actually 19 to 24-year-olds if they have a care plan. And so that is something that the training provider will be able to advise on once you've identified the apprentice that you've got in mind, or if they're bringing someone in for your business. It's worth knowing as well that if your apprentice has additional needs, or they live in what's considered to be a deprived area, or the business and the apprentice are in this deprived area, they may also get, the training provider will get extra support for that apprentice, and that means that you as a business will get extra support from the training provider in order to help that apprentice through the apprenticeship. I think that's those 4 areas are the areas to consider, I think, in the new funding. Is there anything that you think I should add at this point, Claire?
With regards to it, no, I suppose no, not for SMEs, because I was thinking about for apprenticeship for levy payers, where it's slightly different using an ATA, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I won't muddy
so
the
this
water.
funding here applies to SMEs that aren't levy payers and to levy payers that have used up all their levy pot.
Yeah.
So it's in a way much simpler than the previous funding and the way it works. So if you take on an apprentice on May the 6th, this is how it will work for you. Okay. Just one area of the new funding regime that I wanted to highlight is that hasn't applied to before, is that the government has now agreed that if the apprentice is going to be gaining substantive new skills in their apprenticeship, they can also benefit from the funding. So what used to happen is that, say a graduate wanted to train to be a beekeeper, for example, using this photograph, it's a completely different area. It might be a completely different area that their degree was in, but because they had done a degree, they wouldn't have been eligible for apprenticeship funding. But in the new funding regime, graduates will be eligible for retraining on an apprenticeship, which is great news for businesses, because they might have a fantastic graduate that's in place in their business, and the graduate might have done, for instance, the kind of degree I did, which was in English and Classics, not something that can necessarily apply well to a role in business. It could be that individual could go on an apprenticeship that could really get them in the right position they need to be, with the right skills they need for that business. So I think that's really good news. Are people embracing this change, Claire? Are they happy about this change?
Yeah, no, most definitely. One, it's the whole opening up of the funding for older people, so that, because in the past it's been that 16 to 18-year-olds were fully funded, but 19 plus 19 to 23 were 50%, and if you were older, you could end up potentially paying thousands for an apprenticeship. So that's been embraced well by all employees of all sizes. But the retraining for graduates is that, thinking about how you can bring graduates into your business, how you can upskill people. Like things like, is your office manager might have been with you and have a degree in history or something, but you could put them through a level 5 HR, because she or he have been doing the HR function within your business, but doesn't have a qualification for it and wants to move further into that area. So it does, as long as there's a show of progression and of upskilling of the individual, it's really being embraced.
Fantastic, yeah. I think the age thing is going to be, businesses are going to really benefit from that, particularly now that we are working so much longer, and that many of us have different careers throughout our lifetimes. That it seems like a fantastic change to me, and one that's really obvious, and one that can help mature people that are thinking about a a career change later in life. I think it's quite an exciting development, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, levy. I'm going to cover this in 2 slides, and then we're going to move on to ATAs because I'm aware of that we're running low on time. Okay, so levy. Just to cover this for anybody that's not aware of the levy or just wants a bit of a refresher. So the levy payment is one that applies to businesses with a payroll of over 3 million. And this graph illustrates the kind of businesses those are likely to be. So if a business has less than 49 employees, it's very unlikely that they will need to pay the levy unless there's a small amount of employees on very big salaries, because it's all based on your payroll. If a business has under 249 employees, there's only a few of those businesses that will be required to pay the levy. If they've got over 3 million payroll, so they pay the levy. And even if they're paying a levy, it's likely to be a small one, because it's unlikely that their payroll is going to be so huge that they'll be paying massive amounts of levy payments. So the levy is really hitting businesses with over 250 employees, and the blue bits of the graphic show you the amount of employers with over 250 employees that are going to be paying the levy. And the levy is a tax, essentially, which is calculated as 0.5% of your annual payroll, but it's paid on a monthly basis. So using this as an example, if your payroll is 3 million, this is the threshold of when businesses are going to start paying over this amount. If your payroll is 3 million, you will have to pay 0.5% of this as a levy to the HMRC. However, you get an allowance of 15,000, everybody does, which means if actually your payroll's 3 million, you won't need to pay anything. When it starts to kick in is when you get to 4 million and so on, because that's when the levy will start to go up. If you've got a payroll of 4 million, just to go back to the previous one, which is most likely scenario for sort of larger SMEs, say the payroll's around 4 million, your levy payment will still only be around £5,000 a year, paid on a monthly basis. And that levy payment goes into a levy pot, which you can access when you register for the apprenticeship service, the online apprenticeship service, and then you can use that levy pot to pay for apprenticeship training. And when you pay for that apprenticeship training, the government will top up that pot with an additional 10%. So you'll have 5,500 there that you can use for apprenticeship training. So you have to use all of that up before you start going on to the co-investment model that I described previously. So that's levy in a nutshell. Did I cover everything necessary for the levy there, do you think?
It did. I think the one thing that some companies don't quite understand, no, I don't necessarily mean understand, is like when sitting down and thinking, I've got £5,000, what can I spend it on? And it's thinking, a level 3 engineering apprenticeship is 9,000, and a business admin is 2,000, but then you could be looking at a higher end IT, it could be 18,000. So yes, it's worth if you are in being in the levy, you are part of the levy and you have got a levy pot, it's definitely worth sitting down and planning how you're going to use your money against which kind of frameworks and standards.
Yeah. And if you are an SME, a larger SME that is eligible for the levy, it's likely that your levy pot will still be relatively small when we start thinking about apprenticeships. So it should be pretty straightforward to, if you've never had an apprentice before, to think, well, okay, I've got a levy pot of say 5,000 to 10,000. Maybe we now use this to employ our very first apprentice. We use that levy pot for this year, and then as it develops, you can get. It's not something to panic about necessarily. It's just something to. It's a nice way to introduce apprenticeships to your business. Obviously, the businesses that are large ones that are paying massive amounts of levy, maybe radically kind of, developing apprenticeship strategies now that they haven't done previously. But for the SMEs that we're working with, it can be a nice introduction to apprenticeships, certainly.
Yeah.
So this is how it works. If you're a levy payer, you use the levy pot first that you're developing, and levy payers started paying from April the 6th, I think, this year. So their levy pot is accessible from May. Once they've used up that levy pot, they go on to the co-investment, where they contribute 10% and the government contributes 90%. For non-levy payers, it's the 10% co-investment. All ages, all levels, all sectors and all backgrounds. Okay, eventually we've got onto ATAs. It's taken a while, hasn't it? Can you give us an overview of the Southwest Apprenticeship Company model? Because I know that's, obviously that's the one that you know about in great detail. And let's know how it works. Yeah.
No, with that, so apprenticeship training agencies that we all have to go through a stringent quality process with the Skills Funding Agency before we can be on a register, and the register is being updated at the moment actually. So there'll be a register online, a new register online that you can go to see the ATAs in your area and who delivers. If you're we're not sector focused, some ATAs are very sector focused. We work across the southwest, however, we do go into Hereford, and we've had apprentices in Wales before as well. So most ATAs run the same model. So I'll run through our model, but just to say that some can be slightly different. So it's definitely not all the same. Some are run by training providers and might only match you to that training provider, whereas at the Southwest Apprenticeship Company, we're completely impartial, and so we work with all training providers across the Southwest and look to match the training to who is most convenient or best for the company. So what we are is we're not a training, because a lot of people think we are a training provider. We don't deliver any kind of training at all. We are basically an apprenticeship recruitment and employment agency. So we are specialists in apprenticeship recruitment. We go into organisations, we sit down with them, and I think, as I said earlier, we look at their skills gaps, help them to write job descriptions if they've never written a job description before, help them to write something that is attractive towards young people. We will do the full advertising for them, and do all the interviewing, the sifting and the matching, etc. And then once we've got to the stage where the young person we feel they're suitable for the role, we'll put them forward to the host organisation for them to do their final interview to choose the apprentice. We've already, at this point, matched it to a apprenticeship framework and matched it to a training provider. So if they want to go ahead, we employ the apprentice and they're placed within the host organisation to complete their training. But it's their contract of employment / apprenticeship agreement is with ourselves. We deal with all the HR, we deal with all the payroll for the apprentice, and we also mentor them. So this is where I suppose we might be slightly different from some ATAs. We have a learner account manager who is assigned to each apprentice, who works alongside, making sure that the training provider is delivering what they should do, monitoring their learning, individual learning plan. If anything goes wrong, we're there and to deal with the bad stuff, but also to deal with the good stuff. So as part of what the learner account manager does is we have developed a performance improvement plan for our apprentices. So we work with them to get the most out of it, to give the greater impact within the workplace, thinking about what training they've got, what their job role is, and what their objectives within the business. So all ATAs basically employ the apprentice and its host within the organisation. Some of us are slightly different. I suppose we're quite hands-on, and we support all organisations of all sizes. Sometimes it is because they don't have any infrastructure. So your one-man band who doesn't have any HR, who doesn't want to run the payroll themselves, up to the first company taking their first apprentice on who want to be handheld. To the very large multinational who's got headcount problems, and so they use us as they would use a employment recruitment agency.
Right. Okay. I think for SMEs it can be a really great way to dip their toe in the water of apprenticeships. Do you have SMEs that use your services initially and then feel confident enough to actually employ an apprentice direct?
Go ahead. We have we are quite lucky. A lot of the companies that use us, the SMEs, come back again and again and again, just because that it's a case of they found that because we do the full recruitment for them, then they just want to carry on with that because they've got that safety net around them. And we have got other employers though who have now gone it alone. We've got one employer actually who won, who's worked with us for a number of years, and we nominated them for the National Apprenticeship Awards, and they won for the employer size category. So like they're perfect now. They've set up their apprenticeship program. They've embedded all the good practice, all the good recruitment techniques, etc., and the performance review, and they're really ready to go it alone.
Mm-hmm.
But we get a lot of repeat business because it's the whole hand holding. I was with a school yesterday, and they said that they didn't know where to start, and they didn't know, they didn't realise that they could do the apprenticeship could be done in laboratory technician, and it was all a bit scary. They didn't. So we make it easier for them, and that's what ATAs are there for, is to make it easier for employers, especially the small ones, to engage with apprenticeships.
Yeah. In terms of the support you offer employers, then these are the things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Sorry, Claire.
No, sorry. I thought you were going to ask me a question.
Sorry.
So as I said, we work with local providers, so that we give a choice to the actual organisation. So you will never get a case of it's just Gloucestershire College, it's just City of Bristol, or it's just Western. It's you get a choice to see how it's delivered, how perhaps what the satisfaction rates are for the provider as well. The support with the host, obviously we've talked about recruitment, so we do a full recruitment process, which is all ATAs will do that. They'll do a specialised recruitment process for you. The performance management is dealing with the good stuff and the bad stuff, apprentices using mobile phones, dealing with lateness or gross misconduct, etc. So anything that is a disciplinary, then we would run it for it. All the HR, we deal with all the paperwork, all the contracts, all the job descriptions. The payroll, obviously we pay them, and we deal with all the PAYE. But most importantly is that most ATAs will work with you to look at the progression of the apprentice within your business. So how you can use apprenticeships to support your business growth and have, like I said, their positive impact on the business. So it's looking to make sure at the very beginning, when you've looked at the objectives of why you've had that apprentice apprentice is aware of those objectives and how they're going to achieve them at the end, and how you can progress them through, if they come in at a level 2 business admin, how you can progress them onto the level 3 to make them have a bigger business impact. All ATAs charge. So it isn't a case of, I've been asked that before, oh, so you pay the wages? Yes, we do, but we're like a recruitment agency. So we charge the host employer the wages plus an admin fee. Now we do a weekly admin fee on top of it. Some ATAs actually do a percentage of the wage. So the more that you pay the apprentice, the more that you pay the ATA. We've kind of kept it nice and simple and just done a weekly admin fee.
So it's quite clear to the business what the charge is. So it's very clean in the way for them. They can say, right, well, I'm going to pay the wages, which I would have to pay anyway if I take on an apprentice. But if I pay this additional fee to the ATA, they will look after all of this. And so it's
deal with
very straightforward, isn't it, as a model?
It is. What we always do as well, we sit down with them at the very beginning so they understand what the costs are, and so that they can go back. Quite often, with a smaller business, they'll go back, they'll have to sit down with the directors, put it through the business plan, make sure it fits within within their budget, etc., so that they can understand that if they do it that way, that's how much it's going to cost them. But they won't have to go and get extra, pay for extra HR advice if something goes wrong if they come to an ATA, because the ATA is the employer. So we have to deal with the HR side of it. And we also manage the the training provider, which means that we've got one small business that we work with who's a one-man band, and he just wants to get on with his business. Him and the apprentice are out all day doing landscape gardening. He doesn't want to be thinking about how he has to deal with anything. He just wants to get on with his job and finish the jobs that he's been asked to do. Right. So yes, that's it's perfect for an
really appealing to lots of small business. I can see why it would be. And when is their relationship with you over? So the apprenticeship comes to an end. Do they normally take the apprentice on? Do you have to find another job for the apprentice? How does that work?
So we have, at the moment, our KPIs, so we've only been looking at success rates for probably the last 2-3 years, but it's 98% of our apprentices complete, and that's because of the robust recruitment process you've had at the beginning and then the support. But then of those ones that have completed, 98% of our apprentices are employed or progress on to hire within the organisation on a higher apprenticeship. But we work with our employers to make sure that there is a job role at the end of the position. If there isn't, then we'll work with the apprentice to make sure that we find, we help them with their CV and their interview techniques to try and find them another position within another organisation. Like when it gets to the end of their apprenticeship, I can't say for all ATAs that they transfer over to the company for free. It's not like there isn't another hidden charge within that. It's just the support. So for us, our success rate is that they are employed, because that's what our main objective is for our business, is that they're employed at the end.
Right. Okay. That sounds like a really nice transition for them. And so the different types of models that you offer, and this is fairly typical of what ATAs offer. This is your graph. So could you just
that's fine. So the hosting model, obviously there's ticks in every single box. So that's what we originally started doing. So that's what when we first started out back in 2010, that's what we started doing with the sourcing, matching suitable training providers, recruitment, interview, apprenticeship, HR, payroll, contract management, support advice and pastoral support, troubleshooting, pre-placement apprentice induction, and a personal dedicated account manager. We were quite quickly asked by larger organisations in particular if we could support them with recruitment. So that's why we offered a recruitment model. And then the support model is because we've had large organisations, mostly who have used us for the hosting model in the past, who now use us for the recruitment, and then there's the ongoing support later. However, they've taken the HR, payroll and contract management role within the organisation. So that's what I said, when we've helped an organisation to set it all up and then they're happy with, they've got all the processes and systems in place. However, they still want the dedicated account manager to come out and offer the mentoring support for the apprentice and to be there with to help with the training provider and the troubleshooting, etc.
Great, okay, that's really useful, thank you.
Yes, it's just how it's developed over the years, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see, because businesses don't, it's not one size fits all, is it? So I think businesses have different gaps where they need to help with the full apprenticeship process, so it makes a lot of sense. And you offer support to the apprentice as well, don't you?
Yeah, the apprentice, again, I can't say this is particular for all ATAs, but the way that we do it, from the moment the applicant applies to us, we start to give them a level of support. So whether that's from the telephone interview, giving them pointers, etc., face-to-face interview, helping them to practice being interviewed, etc., helping them with looking at if they're struggling with answering questions, because for a lot of young people it will be the first proper interview that they've had and it's a bit scary. We produce guides on how to interview techniques and how to prepare for interview, how to look at your CV, produce a good CV with a cover letter, what you should be covering within there, etc. So it starts off really quite early on. We also talk to them about how progression and how, where do they want to be. So this is where they're entering into their career, but looking to see which pathway they want to take, where do they want to be, what do they want to achieve. So there's one apprentice that I think you might have a slide later, but Emily, she did the level 2, level 3 business admin, and then she was taken on direct by her company, who have now put her through accountancy level 2, and she'll be coming up to do accountancy level 3. So that's about, looking about with the individual, what do they want to do, what do they want to get long term out of it. So yeah, they're all, once they've been placed and they've been offered a position, they get assigned a learner account manager who works alongside them throughout their apprenticeship journey. So they have apprenticeship, so a learner supervision plan, which they have, which is the standard, like, so we're in contact with you every 6 weeks, we come and see you every 13 weeks, we do this with the training provider. However, if something is going wrong at any point, then we step in to the organisation, to the host organisation or the individual, to offer that more hand-holding if it's needed. And if it's not needed, then we just give the standards, like the coming out and making sure. But they're mostly in contact with the learner account manager. Some of them are in contact with them each week, but other ones, as they've gone further into their apprenticeship, have stepped back and don't need that support so much anymore. But it just gives the apprentice somebody outside of the host environment to talk to. So if they've got slight concerns and they just want to talk it through, they can do it with somebody who is impartial.
Great, okay. And let's just whiz through a couple of case studies. We've only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So Rhiannon,
So Rhiannon was at college, had gone to school, gone to college, and done very well. Didn't want to go to university. She jumped at the chance of doing the laboratory technicians level 2, which is within a school. She's doing really well. She's coming up to completion. She loves her role. So yeah, it's for her. It's ticked all the boxes.
Brilliant.
And
this is Emily, who you mentioned before.
I did. Emily, we mentioned earlier. So yeah, she's completed now, whereas Rhiannon is still on programme. Emily did her level 2, level 3, and was employed by SWAC. And then once she completed level 3, she was employed by the company. Like typical small company, as in they brought one apprentice in. They weren't looking to have a whole programme of apprentices. So she's joined the team. They're a small company, so you see there's 5 of them, a small company, and now they're supporting her to help grow the business. So she's moved into more of the accountancy side. So and again, she's an absolute success story for both company and apprentice.
Brilliant. And so in the health sector, this one, is it Rosebank?
It is Rosebank. Rosebank have had, it says 12 there, it might be even more apprentices from us now across business admin and IT. They have embraced apprenticeships. All the apprentices have been through SWAC, and we've had quite a few apprenticeship award winners actually. So actually last year they'd had a 2016 award winner, nomination as well. They bring their apprentices in, and I think 99% of them, I think all bar one, may have been employed on completion. So it's very much about using apprenticeships to grow their team as the practice has grown, and the apprentices have brought in new skills to the business. One introduced a new triage service that saved the health the centre hours and hours of time each week. Another one did a whole skills audit of all the staff there so that they could share tasks when people went away, which has made them more productive. So excellent.
Great. And Oriel and Cable Intelligence.
Yeah, both of them, small companies. Cable Intelligence, Paul is, it's him and his business partner that's there. They've had 3 apprentices now. One of their apprentices went on to win, not only just locally, they won nationally as well. They've used their apprentices really to grow their business. They've all moved on, within the business, and they're continuing to develop them within there. And they've helped them to look at different areas of business where they've got, particular, they've talent spotted them, shall I say? So they've used them. So some of, one of might be more administration side, looking at business planning and operationals, whereas one of the others was much more sort of like marketing focused, social media. And their award winner implemented a social media strategy, which they hadn't had before, which increased sales within the first month of implementing it. So, he definitely was using the skills that was being given by the apprenticeship training to help to improve the business. So, yeah, done really well.
And so I know that we're slightly over time, so I just want to give people, make sure they've got the contact details they need, and let's see if we've got additional questions. So if a business is completely new to apprenticeships, then they really should take some time just to look on the gov.uk site and look at the advice they give around taking on an apprentice. And this is a small business helpline who can help connect businesses to training providers. I don't know how often the Small Business Helpline refers people to ATAs. Is that something that you know about? Is it something that they make businesses aware of?
We've had probably in the last 5 years about 5 referrals, so it isn't very often. Yeah, and it's normally when an organisation has turned around to them and said, well, we can't do it because I don't want to, I don't want the risk, or it's too scary.
Only when they sort of put all the signals out that they become aware of it. I think for small businesses, it's something that they should really be aware of, so they can weigh it up themselves and decide whether it's something that they would benefit from. Because I think for lots of businesses that are brand new to it, it seems like a very good option. I mean, of course, there are lots of training providers that offer lots of support as well. And so for the individual business, they need to weigh up what's available for the apprenticeship they're interested in and decide whether it's a good offer for them, really, don't they?
Whether it's right for them. Yeah, no, definitely. And whether, thinking about budgets and things like that, and how it fits in within what they're already doing. So, but a good ATA should give you impartial advice and choice as to which ways you can do it.
Great, okay. This outlines mine and Claire's details, so people are very welcome to contact us after this webinar and ask us any questions direct. I just wanted to ask just around businesses that contact you that potentially could work with training provider direct. What do you see as being the main benefits of working with an ATA as opposed to working, say, with their local college?
Well, we've got organisations that have worked with the local college but have come to us because, they found us on the internet or something, or someone's recommended them to us, or they found that there's a training course that they've thought about, apprenticeship they've thought about, and the local college doesn't deliver it. And then they've come to us that way and realised that there's this different offer, a way of doing it. But it really, the main key is, I'm thinking of one company in particular, which is in Bristol, who originally had approached the local college and then come to us. They decided that they were a small company just over 50, and they wanted to take on one apprentice. And after sitting down with them and going through their business planning and objectives for the next year, they decided to take one on with the local college doing accountancy, one on with a specialist training provider doing IT, and one on doing business admin, specialising in events management. So and that's with a different training provider again. So it gave the organisation, we manage all the training providers, so they don't have to manage each individual one, and being able to give them access to specialised training. Whereas, when they'd originally gone in, it would have probably just been for accountancy. But because of that hand-holding, them helping them see what was available out there, what other kind of training, what other kind of ways of delivery, they've engaged with apprentices more, because they've realised that there's so much more out there. Yeah.
That's great. That's really useful and really interesting. Thank you very much. I think we'll have to wrap up now because we have gone over time, as we thought we might, because there was lots of content to cover. I'd like to thank everybody that has dialed in today. As I said, please contact us if you've got any further questions. I'll be sending an email following this with lots of links in it to useful information. And I also will be sending out a survey asking for your feedback and any other further thoughts you have on what we could cover in a webinar like this, but also in any other types of webinars as well. Please get in touch with Apprentice Maker as well. Sign up for the newsletter, find out about our mentor training if that's something that you're interested in as an organisation, because that helps us support the wider Apprentice Makers offer as well. And keep an eye out for future webinars like this. Thank you, Claire, so much for supporting with this webinar today. Thanks for all your expertise and help throughout. It's been really useful and really interesting. So thanks, everybody. I think we'll sign off now. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.